Hey, friends, it's Michael Kingswood, and we are live for the deep dive. It's been a few days since I went live with folks because I've been really busy, but also because I've been really busy. Anyway, so this is Wednesday. We're doing Warship Wednesday, and I had a good reaction from the last one last week about the Barb's engagement with Takashima Maru, and today we're going to talk a little bit about USS Constitution. Um, I have a not well storied, but I'll just say storied history in my own world with the Constitution. And as everybody knows, she's a famous U.S. Navy warship, one of 6 frigates that were constructed under the congressional order under George Washington. The congressional bill was signed in 1794 to lay down 4 ships of 44 guns and 2 of 36, and Constitution was one of those 6. She was a 44 gun. The others were the United States, Constellation, Chesapeake, Congress, United States Constitution, Chesapeake, Congress, President, and Constitution. And some of them went on to less than awesome futures, but Constitution went on to an awesome future, and she is still afloat and in commission today, the oldest commissioned warship in the world. Um, and manned by active duty U.S. Navy sailors, commanded by an active duty naval officer, and you know does her thing. Her thing these days is mostly a museum piece and teaching history and cool stuff like that. Um, but for a while, she was no kidding the an actual warship and did some great stuff. And then she was a training ship. And then she was in layup for a while, and they're thinking about scrapping her. And there was a money drive put together by a bunch of kids in school to save her, and they saved her, and then they took her on around the nation cruise, and then they basically turned her into a still active museum piece in Boston Harbor in Charlestown, where she is now. In the early '90s, they refit her to get her as close to her original construction um, status as they could, based on historical documents they were recovered, among them blueprints from USS President, which was captured by the British. And then the British naval architects examined her to figure out why our ships were so much better than theirs. And we have recovered uh, the drawings they did, and the naval architects now use those drawings to reconstruct her to refit her rather back to her original um, configuration as best as we could based on you know data. But I had the privilege of having gone to school in Boston, getting commissioned on board a good ship, Constitution. And the year before I got commissioned as a naval officer, I took a turnaround cruise in Boston Harbor. So I was there for the summer because I had, as the end of my junior year uh, drew near, I looked through the number of courses completed, the number of credits required, and I realized, holy crap, I have to do two. I got to do 2 electives, or I'm not going to graduate next year. So I took 2 electives over the course of the summer. It was an English composition course and a philosophy course. But I stayed in Boston for the summer for that and worked, various odd jobs and, stayed with friends in an apartment. It was great summer. But the opportunity came out to do a turnaround cruise because my ROTC unit has a connection with the ship, because we always did our commissioning ceremonies on the ship. And there's like, hey, if you want to do a turnaround cruise, yeah, sure, I'll go. And I brought my friend DJ with me. Good old DJ. She's actually, I think she's still here in San Diego, but fun story about her. But anyway, I'm not romantic or anything, just fun how we hung out all those times. But anyway, she came along with me, and we kind of did the turnaround cruise, and there was this ensign this dude, he's newly commissioned ensign there. He's there on the ship. He's doing the tour guide thing. He's leading the whole ship through the how the tour works, and talking to the on the PA to the crew to the public during the turnaround cruise. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. And afterwards, I walked up to him and I was like, hey, how'd you get this job? And uh, and the captain was there, and I talked to the captain. I was like, hey, I'm here. I'm getting commissioned next year. Do you think I get this job next summer? He's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, tell the detailer I'm good. I'm like, cool. So when I got into nuclear power school, got accepted to nuclear power school in the fall of my senior year, the detailer was like, all right, when are you going to go to school? When are you going to go to nuclear power school? What's your deal? I was like, well, hey, talk to the Constitution captain, because he and I talked last summer, and he wants me to come stash with him. Because typically when you're an ensign, you don't go directly to your uh, initial training school, because there's stuff going on, and there's you can't send everybody to the school at the same time, right? Otherwise, you block up. So you class up people in order. And oh, look, Pierre Gizmo says evening. Hey, good evening. Anyway, you can't put everybody in school at the same time. So typically, newly commissioned ensigns will get stashed someplace. And me being in Boston and having already talked to the Constitution CEO, I was like, hey, stash me there. And detailer did whatever he did. Next thing you know, is like, I'm spending the summer on the Constitution. And little did I know, this was the summer of 1997, and I didn't really realize at the time. I knew the Constitution was old, but I didn't realize the Constitution was commissioned in September of 1797. So this was the 200th anniversary of her commissioning. So the Navy had this event planned called Operation Sail 200, where for decades they've been taking the Constitution in their tow and around Boston Harbor and turn her around and shoot cannons and bring her back. And it's like a cool thing, but it's like, no, we just refit the ship to bring her back to original fighting trim. We're going to take her out in her sail, by God. We're going to sail her. And so I showed up in the middle of training to sail. So I'm just newly commissioned ensign. Hey, here's your rigging belt. Get up in the tops. Get up on the main top. You're on the sailing crew. It's like, cool. So I'm furling the sails and I'm hauling on the clue and I'm doing all this stuff. And a couple months later, Secretary of the Navy comes by, all these other bigwigs come by, Neil Armstrong comes by, all this festivities coming by, and we sailed and we take the ship and we get under sail and we go up to Gloucester. We get off in Gloucester. They parade us through the streets. Whole big party. They put us up in people's houses. We have fun all night and come back, sail back to Boston. And there's a big shindig and bands and hoo-yah, and it's just great stuff. And it's like, man, it's the most amazing thing ever. And they brought 19 midshipmen from the Naval Academy and other places along to be help. And I is the junior. There's the captain. There's the XO, there's me, and there's the enlisted crew. So they're like, hey, ensign, you're in charge of the midshipmen. So I had 19 dudes I was in charge of the whole time. It was like, man, it's the best stashed ensign duty ever. As a consequence, I got to like the Constitution. This book, A Most Fortunate Ship, written by Tyrone Martin, who was one of the COs of the Constitution, it was obviously for sale in the Constitution store. It was one of the keepsakes I took when I left there. Among other things, I got this great walking stick and a few other things as a crew member commemoration. And it was a good time. But just to show you that I'm not blowing smoke, let me show you some receipts. So let me show this bigger. So these are some pictures I took. This is me inside in the one of our operations when we were getting ready for the sail. It's a bad pose, but that's me in the entrance, one of the entrance gangplanks going into the ship. You can see how thick the hull is there. One of the great things about the Constitution hull was that set her apart and all these frigates was 3 layers of wood. The inner and outer layer were white oak. The center layer was live oak from the Carolinas, which, if you know anything about live oak, it's really dense. It will sink in water, and it's really hard to cut. So the reason she got her nickname Old Ironsides is in the battle with the Guerriere, I believe it was, British were shooting at her, and the cannonballs just bounced off her hull, and both British and our sailors were like, "Holy cow!" And somebody shouted, "Huzzah! Her sides are made of iron," and that's how she got her nickname. You can see here in this picture how thick the hull is. Anyway, that's me. Bad pose, whatever. That's me with Captain Mike Beck, 63rd in command. Um, Good dude. He went on to be a history teacher, and right after the sail, and the other guy, Chris Melhuish, he took over. He's the one who signed my fit rep. Anyway, this is preparations for the sail. This is me as we're getting underway. Look at that cute little ensign. We got escorted by this frigate, which I don't remember which frigate this was, and by this destroyer, the USS Ramage, which was named after World War II submarine captain Lawson Red Ramage, who received the Medal of Honor. So good to have him there. Good to have them there. But anyway, so this is the main topsail. If you see the dude, 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth from the left with the thumbs up, yeah, that's me doing that. And this is what the topsail and the forward jibs looked like when we were under sail. Because we went under topsail and jib alone, just because limited crew. Constitution, when she was under full manning, had a crew of about 500 people, much more than we had as the museum crew, right? So it was yeah, only so much you could do. So, but topsails and jib alone was fine for what we were doing. And then as we moved into Gloucester Harbor, went to dress ship, which put people up in all the yards and whites. And I put basically put all my midshipmen up there and me. And this is looking down. This shot was taken from the forward mast royal yard. I gave the people up there my camera, and that's me on the right, thumbs up. But we were on the foremast gallant yard, and that guy Tim, I think that's Tim Feist. He was one of the midshipmen. So he went on to be a Marine officer, good dude. But I remember we're getting towed into Gloucester Harbor, and he's like, "Dude, I can't believe we're doing this." I'm right there with you, man. This is the best thing ever. Anyway, spent the night in Gloucester, and then various people in town put us up. It was a great time, and I took this shot as we were going back to the ship the next morning. Now, why do I show that? Is it to brag? Maybe a little bit, but it's not bragging if you can do it or if you've done it. I just feel like sharing. Anyway, all that having been said, I dig this ship. I dig the history of her. It's good stuff. So there's another little anecdote that I'd like to share that came out of this book by the former Constitution CEO here that I found was interesting. This is about her initial tour. She was commissioned in 97. And hey Pierre, no, we didn't have any problems with the rigging during that sail. No, this is everything went fine. The discussion I tend to have is about her actual early history, but yeah, it went great. It was a great time, and we actually got a meritorious unit commendation from it, so it was just kind of fun. But when Constitution was first commissioned, she got put under command of a guy named Nicholson, and they very shortly after there, the pseudo war with France started heating up. Right, she got the contract was let under Washington. She was commissioned under Adams, and under Adams, the pseudo war started cooking up. Right, so she got sent down to the West Indies as the flagship of a squadron of a number of smaller vessels that came in. Yeah, several of them got switched in and out to interdict French shipping. Of course, there was complications because some of the countries down there that were nominally French, or at least French associated, We're like, hey, we got we we don't want you guys screwing up our harbor. So some of the places they could go into, and some of them they couldn't. But I found this particular engagement interesting and kind of fun. So I figured I'd share it with you. So this comes from the book A Most Fortunate Ship, written by Tyrone Martin. This takes place in the month of May in 1800. And I'm going to read and interject some commentary. So the new captain, Talbot. So Nicholson, there were some issues, personality issues with him and some performance issues, and it was just came time to rotate him out. So this new guy, Silas Talbot, got put in command, and he apparently did a much better job than Nicholson did in terms of crew morale and performance and all this other sort of thing. And he had been working in the West Indies, working to windward, try to go figure out what's going on in the ports of Isabella and Puerto Plata, which is east of Cape Francois. He had seen 3 vessels in that port earlier. One of them they found was Danish, but he was curious about the activities of ships in that harbor, so he sent in a small cutter to reconnoiter. It returned that there was too many reefs, that the ship itself couldn't get in, but there was in fact other vessels there, probably French, probably something they could take. Because remember, it's not just, back then it wasn't just, hey, we're fighting for God and country and taking, taking it to the enemy. You get prize money back then. Right? You take a ship as a naval officer, you take a ship from the other nation, the belligerent nation, take it back to your nation, you'd get paid for it. It's been a while since I looked it up. I think it was split in 7. So the captain got two shares, the wardroom got 2 shares, and the officer and the rest of the crew got 3 shares. I think that's how it went. So there's a lot of money to be made from taking a prize. So it's better to take the ship whole than to sink it or burn it. So it's both patriotism, but also, hey, give me some money. Was behind all the store stuff then. So a few days went by, and they spied a sail close into shore that seemed to be coming from the place they'd been looking at. So one of their ships under the command, the Amphitheater, they went in to see what it was, and the Amphitheater returned with news that there were 2 privateers in the prize were anchored close in there. They went in the Amphitheater with 2 smaller armed boats. Amphitheater is a smaller ship. Went in to do the battle, but they lost track of who was going on. Didn't hear any word for a while. They're starting to get worried about their folks. They eventually people came back with the American brig Nymph, which is one of the prize that had been taken by these privateers. They had $7,000 in a cargo of dry goods. Okay, cool. But they and the log, and they also had another. They also took a privateer schooner called the Esther, which carried 3 guns and a crew of 43. Okay, cool. Their small ship, the Amphitheater, lost their rudder, and they had wounded men. So they went to but one of the privateer barges got away. So they sent this guy, Lieutenant Collins, with 2 more armed boats to try to get that barge. So Collins and his little force were nowhere in sight when the sun rose. A large cutter returned at 1:30 p.m., but the midshipman who put in charge didn't have any idea what happened to the lieutenant's craft, and Captain Talbot was anxious, and he sent his other 2 boats, Amphitheater and Esther, to go look for it. They returned empty-handed, and they set a watch, trying to wonder what's going on. But eventually, another ship, the Herald, came back and reported they had made contact with Lieutenant Collins, and he had taken a sloop that had come out of the harbor, And Collins came back with a sloop called the Sally, a 58-ton sloop that was an American ship that had been taken and was also had been at Puerto Plata, which is the place they had looked at her previously. And it turned out that Sally was well known at Puerto Plata, and her master was well, who a guy named Sanford was well known there too. So there wouldn't be any issue with the Sally coming into port. And remember, they had seen those 3 ships at the Puerto Plata earlier. So Captain Talbot was like, "We're going to send in the Trojan horse." So I will now read verbatim. By the evening of the 10th of May, lying out of sight from shore, the Sally was ready for her big movement. Talbot ordered First Lieutenant Hull, if you know anything about Constitution, Lieutenant Hull, and later on, more highly promoted Hull, features very prominently. So Lieutenant Hull, Marine Captain Carmick, and his lieutenant, together with 90 seamen and Marines, boarded the sloop Sally and went in there. They're going to sail into Puerto Plata with a few crew member on deck, everybody else down below, to innocently make anchorage in this place where the ship had been seen many times and nobody knew it had been taken. Nobody knew what it was. When the morning with the morning sun came a steady breeze. The raiders entered Puerto Plata with no one suspecting Sally's changed character. Hull guided her straight to the objective, that privateer ship they'd seen before, and Marine Captain Carmick wrote what happened next. We all remained below until we received orders from the officer, Lieutenant Hull, the only one of us who remained on deck of the sloop, whose business was to lay us on board, which he did on the starboard bow. The men went on board like devils, and it was as much as the first lieutenant and myself could do to prevent blood being spilt. I believe it was not half an hour before the ship was taken that I had possession of the fort and all the cannon spiked and returned on board the prize before they could get any succors from the city. So they took the ship pretty much without having to kill anybody because they stunned them. Hull's lightning attack had stunned both the privateer crew and the town's inhabitants. A good thing, too, for he found his prize had all but its lower masts unshipped and the rigging coiled in the hold. Calmly, he sent gun crews to place the ship's battery in readiness and had the Marines stationed to repel boarders. With the remaining seamen, Hull set about re-rigging the ship, and by sunset, she was ready in all respects, and at midnight, Sally and her prize sailed in perfect order on an offshore breeze without the loss of a single man. Shortly before noon the next day, they rejoined the Constitution and the Nymph. The prize had been the British packet Sandwich, but for the previous 3 and 4 years, she had been a French privateer. She was fast, copper bottomed, with 6-pounders and 2 9-pound cannons, and she had coffee and sugar on board. So probably a good amount of money. But as it turned out, they got congratulations to the Secretary of the Navy, but the Sandwich, when it was taken, had been going to a Spanish port. And thus, since it was going to a neutral port when it was taken by the French, they couldn't get any prize money because of the way the laws of war worked back then. So they took this prize, which would have gotten them a bunch of money, did it daringly with concealment, deception, Trojan horse. But they ended up, and eventually the diplomats ended up getting this ship back to the French and saying, "Hey, sorry about this, dude. We didn't realize he was actually going to a neutral port when you took it. So no prize money for Constitution. Better luck next time." But still, it's a cool engagement because they've been scouting this place out for a while, managed to get the ship that was well known to them, Trojan horse in. I like it. It's a good engagement. Yeah, so that's that. Hopefully you guys liked it too. We'll be able to do it more from Constitution, and we'll also go back from USS Barb because I love her as well. But I thought this was a good anecdote to share. Yeah, Pierre, no prize money. Let me tell you about no prize money. So, can't go into specifics, but at one time I did some counter drug operations, And let me tell you, we recovered a lot of cocaine and other stuff. A lot. And under the rules of prize money, would have been big money. In fact, I pushed the captain. Hey, Captain, can we get prize money? He's like, shut up. No prize money for you, because you don't do that anymore. It would have been nice, but that was the break sometimes. But I'll tell you what, they Lieutenant Hall went on to do great stuff later on, as so much there's other dudes, and hey, they got some experience, had a cool story to tell, and no doubt enjoyed grog later. That's the engagement with the Constitution and the Sally. Hope you guys liked it. We'll come back for more next week. I'm not sure if I'm going to do Constitution or Barb. We'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, see that little icon on the bottom, mikekingswood.com/store. If you like cool stories, I write a bunch of them. In fact, I've written a bunch of them. Going to write a bunch more. Interestingly enough, some of them are naval based, and there's going to be several more that are Navy based too, because that's how I roll. So go there, check out my books. You can also find me on Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, all the rest. But of course, better come straight to me, because I get more money that way. And if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, or whatever channel you're watching this or listening to this on, make sure you do so. Hit the like and tell all your buddies, because that's how we grow around here. All right, well, hope you like this one. I'm going to sign off. See you next time. Until then, don't do anything I wouldn't do.